This we have with us on the special transmission. James Dorsey is a political analyst. We have with us Sumaira Khan, a correspondent in Kabul, and also Air Vice Marshal retired Shahzad Chaudhry, who will be joined as defense analyst, and Fahim Saadat, he is a political analyst from Kabul now. Sumaira, I'm going to start with you. Obviously now, we are confused about this. Obviously now the US have left. Was the keeping its word or the Taliban's tough, firm stance on no more extension had them in fear? Because as the general said, and then the world heard, they could not get everybody out who they wanted to and left them behind as well.
I'm sorry, Munib. I missed the last part of your question. Can you please come again? Because there was kind of distortion.
That's fine. I'm going to come again. Now, was the US keeping its word or the Taliban's tough and firm stance on no more extension to the US to stay in Kabul? Because as the general said, they could not get everybody out who they wanted to and left them behind.
I think, Munib, if I speak to you based on some ground realities, then let me say that and it will be a harsh reality for the Afghans as well, that US is not interested in evacuating any more Afghans from Afghanistan after they conducted the largest air evacuation program from Afghanistan. Why I'm saying that? Because I'm just going through the stuff I'm receiving from sources both in Washington and both in Kabul from the Taliban quarters. The liaison, the coordination that is going to be taking place between Taliban and Americans is right now, it revolves around evacuating those 100 to 200 American citizens who are right now stranded in Kabul. And these are those people who could not reach either airport or they were asked not to reach airport since this Daesh ISISK thing has resurrected in the outskirts of Kabul airport. So right now the liaison would be evacuating those 100 to 200 people, and I'm sure that Taliban are going to request the Pakistan government in maturing that evacuation from the airport. But if we talk about Afghans and if we talk about SIVs and P2 holders, I'm having this information that US is going slow on evacuating those Afghans. They are not on their priority list.
Right, Sumaira. Now I'm going to have Air Vice Marshal Shahzad Chaudhry, defense analyst, into this conversation now. Mr. Shahzad, the United States, we are going to have with him in a little program. We are going to talk about this with James Dorsey, I beg your pardon now. James, the United States wanted an extension, but the Taliban did not allow an extension. How do you comment on that?
Well, I think both parties were in a bind and are in a bind. So, with other words, the United States has not gotten out a couple of hundred American nationals, which obviously would be their priority. But we also don't know how many of the Afghans, which would have who had worked for the Americans or the alliance in Afghanistan during the war over the past 20 years. How many of those have been left behind? Now, that obviously doesn't score well for President Biden, particularly not given the way that, at least at the beginning, this whole evacuation was, frankly, a mess. On the other hand, the Taliban are in a bind in a sense that, yes, they wanted to declare victory, as they did today at the airport, wanted all foreign forces out of the country, which they have succeeded in getting. But now the onus is on them to fulfill their promise to allow and ensure that those who want to leave the country can leave the country.
Right. Obviously, it was a mess and the world saw that. Now, Fahim, I'm going to have you in this debate now. Fahim, tell us, how does this unceremonious US exit from Afghanistan in the middle of the night impact America's image as a world superpower?
Well, I think the Americans did evacuate a lot of people, but what went wrong was the orderly evacuation process. when the evacuation started, it was supposed to be for people who had worked with the Americans and the coalition forces, and also those Afghans who face a threat, which means that the Afghans who were either high-profile Afghans or who were critique of the Taliban or had some other troubles. But what happened during the evacuation was that everybody lured towards the airport, and you have had a lot of ordinary Afghans who were just fleeing the country because of economic issues or any other issue. And this made the whole process complicated and much rushed. And I think the international community, and as well as especially the US, they were not able to exactly take all those people who were considered at the first list. And we still have some of the people who are, according to the US and coalition forces, at risk, but they are still in Kabul because they could not make it to the airport. Regarding the image, I should say, Waqar, sir, that this will send a shock wave into the hearts and minds of all the US allies across the world, because the American intervention in Afghanistan now seems like a 21 years intervention, and they had to leave where they had started. The previous Afghan government, as their ally, is in tantrum, and they are some of them are even not evacuated. The president is in an uncertain situation in UAE. So what seems to be a defining moment right now is that the allies of the US would reconsider their dependence on the United States of America, because at times they can be abandoned, and at times the Americans' interests can simply get over on them, and they would be left for their on their own. So I think this is one of the message that this whole Operation Enduring Freedom from 2001 to now, and the return of the Taliban, would give to the allies of the US now.
Right, Fahim. Now, Sumaira Khan, I'm coming to you now. You've been in Kabul for a lot of days now, and you understand the ground realities better than obviously many of us around the world. Now, tell us, with the Americans now gone, what are the most major and immediate challenges faced by Afghanistan?
Munib, the foremost challenge for the Taliban right now is ISK. Number one. Second will be obviously how do they go about Panjshir Valley's issue. Third is their economic conditions. And fourth, keeping an eye and keeping a watch on the humanitarian crisis. And fifth will be keeping an eye and keeping a watch on the human rights violations in Afghanistan, which is right now at a very low level, because I could not see in these past 2 weeks or more than 2 weeks since I'm here, I did not see any untoward scene with women and children. And instead, I am compelled to say, and most of my foreign journalist colleagues, those who were staying just besides me at my place, even they noticed one thing, that the crime rate goes to an extremely low point. And the Taliban scout, the Taliban soldier who's right now assigned different pickets in the city on exit and entry places, they are specifically keeping an eye on every wall, on every move and every act against that goes against women or children specifically. So there is a good thing that at least we have some positivity from that side. But Taliban are right now taking major challenges. The issues as a major challenge for them is, one, that how they are going to run the country. Secondly, how they are going to form the country. Third, how they are getting their system and their country on a legitimate forum, like how they are going to earn recognition for Afghanistan with the incumbent setup. And fifth, how to avoid a major dilemma within the Taliban quarters if they are not giving a lion's share, or if they are not going to agree to rendering a major share or a major chunk in power to the other ethnicities, like for instance Tajiks and Uzbeks. So I think there are many challenges, but the Taliban, the Taliban, the kind of Taliban I have seen and I've been meeting in the previous days and previous weeks, they are having a kind of clever strategy towards every strategy. So whenever you are there to ask a question, they already have an answer to that. And I could not and there was another major change in the existing Islamic political parties in the country, like Hizb Islami. The head of Hizb Islami, he has offered his unconditional support to Taliban. So it showed that they are trying to get into their scenario and get into power corridors with all support from the Islamic political party. Then we can lead towards meeting all the challenges.
Right now, James, I also want your view on the same question now. With the Americans now gone, what are the most major and immediate challenges that are going to be faced by Taliban 2.0?
Well, first of all, we've got to wait and see whether we have Taliban 2.0, but let me come back to that in a second. Obviously, the most immediate challenges is one, to form a government that will be perceived as inclusive by Afghanistan's neighbors, as well as the larger international community. That's one. I think the second challenge is going to be economic. One, getting a grip on the bureaucracy, on the government apparatus, and having the funds to be able to operate. I think those are going to be the major challenges. What I just wanted to follow up on a few things that your guest in Kabul said, and obviously she's on the ground. However, I think one has to note that that the Taliban, first of all, have an interest, for the reasons I just mentioned, to ensure that that the world sees that they are implementing what they promised. I think that we're going to have to see whether that is being sustained once they have achieved the international recognition and are getting a degree of economic and humanitarian support. That's one. I think, second of all, what happens in Kabul may not be what's happening in other parts of Afghanistan. And in fact, in some ways, implicitly, the Taliban recognized that by saying that they were asking women to stay at home at the moment in Kabul so that their troops could be retrained in terms of their approach towards women in public. I think also the other challenge is obviously going to be the Islamic State in Khorasan. That is the movement that is going to want to exploit the challenges that the Islamic State encounters. And those challenges include what are the realities of government, whereas what are the realities of being an insurgency. And so you could see rifts within the Taliban with regard to people who don't like the kind of concessions and what is implied in Taliban 2.0. And those people could potentially join the ranks of the Islamic State. Finally, there's one thing I wanted to make, again, following up on what your guest in Kabul said about the lowering of the crime. I have no doubt that that is true. Keep in mind that the Taliban is a successful movement. And because it was a movement that came out in part of providing services. If you look at the history of various violent movements, those that have succeeded best and those that have proven to be the most sustainable were ones that were service providers. So in the case of the Taliban, it was providing security on roads. It was ensuring that trucks were no longer ransomed for like basically blackmailed for their security. And that's something, again, that we're hearing from the rural parts of Afghanistan, that that kind of security is returning to the roads.
Right now, James has made some very important points. Now, Sumaira, I need to get your intel on this. On obviously, Kabul is the center stage right now of the politics and the world politics, if I may say, too. Now, the Taliban are in complete control of Kabul, and they are not letting any human rights violations happen there. But as James said, the complete country of Afghanistan is currently not under the writ of Taliban. Obviously, it might be under the control, but when it comes to the human rights protection, what do you see on the ground there?
I think there are still, to be very honest, Munib, there still are incidents. There will be incidents because it's, I think, a system that has been it has been rolled back after 20 years. And in these past 20 years, there was a complete generation that was taught that the Taliban are a kind of a monstrous breed, and whenever they come to you, they are just aiming at killing you, or they are just aiming at destroying. So right now, I think we should give ample time to the generation who are living in Kabul. And thanks to the older generations who are here for like 50 years or 60 years, they have businesses, they have their setup, they have their houses, they have their traditions related to the soil. They did not leave Afghanistan even in any kind of way. The Soviets or the US withdrawal, they were here on their own land. So I think I spoke to a few vendors at the Doshi earlier, and in Shaheen, whenever I go to the streets and meet people, although they are little hesitant in while speaking to the camera, but yes, they are very open, having debates with us informal way, and they are of the view that if Taliban are able to handle the human rights situation, they do not go monstrous on the people. Then we have people light at the end of the tunnel.
Right now, Fahim, I want you to also comment on this current debate that we are having about the human rights, and obviously the Taliban are in control of Kabul, but we will hear and we will see incidents coming out of Afghanistan as a whole now, if we talk about that. And also do tell us of your perfect and expert analysis about what is going to happen, what are the immediate challenges being faced by Afghanistan right now?
Well, immediately what is needed is the announcement of the composition and nature of the future government. That is something we are all looking for, because that the announcement of the future government will answer a lot of questions, and that will also address a lot of concerns and considerations of the Afghan, that what type of a political system they are going to live in. At the same time, the challenge is that how would be the response of the international community to the announcement of the government, or to the type of the government that the Taliban will announce, whether it will have international legitimacy and recognition. Why is this very important? Because any humanitarian and economic assistance that is going to flow to Afghanistan, which the people are in dire need, depends largely on the nature and composition of the future government, whether it would be an all-inclusive, wide-ranging government, or a government comprised of the Taliban only. So I think right now what is most important is the announcement of the government. Next thing is the constitution. As we all know that there is very still limited information regarding the constitutional views of the Taliban, and also the Taliban are in a very delicate situation, because they need to strike a balance between the demands of the international community for recognition and implementing the Sharia law that they want. And I think they will have to compromise some features of that in order to get the international recognition. Now, to what extent the Taliban seems to be ready to compromise on these, and at the same time convince its hardliners within the movement, is another challenge that we will have to see how they come up with a solution to that. So, and the next, as also my colleague Mahira said, is the humanitarian situation on the ground. The Taliban needs to deliver on the economic and humanitarian fronts soon, because people are in hard situation. There are almost more than 18 million people who are in need of humanitarian assistance. you have the IDPs, and you have the people who are affected hugely by the conflict, particularly in the steppes and rural Afghanistan. So I think challenges are there, but first of all, we need to see the composition and nature of the future government.
Right now, Fahim, you talked about the Taliban making compromises to the Sharia law that they want to have in their Afghanistan. Now, Sumaira, I'm going to ask you for your comment on that. But before you have this part, let's ask James, what do you think? James, do you think the Taliban are or might be in the near future coming to a compromising nature when it comes to the state of government? Because in Doha, they had this repetitive narrative that we are going to have an Islamic-based government. And so far, we have only seen the same statement coming out of the Taliban that in our country, we are going to have an Islamic-based system.
They have not fundamentally changed their philosophy or interpretation of the faith. And they've been very consistent, to be fair to them. Now, having said that, there is no doubt in my mind that there is part of the Taliban that recognize that Afghanistan, at least parts of Afghanistan, of today are not what they were 20 years ago. And that today they are much more in need of international recognition and everything that comes with it than they were 25 years ago when they last took power. Now, what that means in practice, I think we have to wait and see, because I think it's going to be a function of, one, the balance of power within the movement itself, within the Taliban itself, and the degree to which they, on the one hand, get rewarded by the international community. And I think we've got to segment then the international community, because how Afghanistan's region, including China and Russia, will respond is one thing. How the West, the United States and Europe will respond, as well as its allies in Asia, may be another thing. So I think that, one is going to be the degree to which the Taliban feel that it's being paid off, both internationally but also domestically. And domestically means their relationships within the group itself, as well as whether or not that leads to leakage to other militants in the country, either ethnic groups, Uzbeks or Tajiks, or the Islamic State.
Right now, Sumaira, also comment on this. Do you are there in Kabul? Do you think the Taliban might look in a mood in the future? Obviously, he's talking about international recognition, that they might compromise just a bit or on certain areas in the Sharia law that they want to implement in Afghanistan.
Munib, I see a lot of changes, honestly. If we are seeing the Taliban who were not earlier in their previous regime, they were not even watching television. But right now, they are more adept in using social media and everything, more than me and you. I have seen them working, like the way they handle social media, the way they have social media brains, the way they have social media experts and media experts and translators and interpreters. So I think there is room for more changes. If they can bring changes to Sharia law according to their wish and whim, to convey their message to the masses and in international community, then why not? Why not to other sects of the society? And they have to, and they will. What I predict is they will bring changes to bring people to I think, bridge the gap between them and the masses and the people of Afghanistan, because they are Afghans too. So they know how to bridge that gap. And this is why the top leadership of Taliban, they have time and again said these things to us, not just to the media people, but they are issuing these statements on their social media platforms as well and their interviews as well, that yes, we are open to changes. Like they have called back every woman who's associated with each and every ministry of the Federation right here in Kabul. They did not terminate any women. They also refuted all the video messages, a few that were made by a few female journalists that we were asked not to attend their offices. They even refuted those that those female journalists, maybe they wanted to have better future in Western countries. They left, but we did not ask anyone to leave. So they are trying to make changes over there, and I think if those changes are there, I see a prosperous Afghanistan. And if they do these things like minus changes and against Sharia law in Afghanistan, without any capacity offered to the women and youth, and if they don't let them live their life according to their wish, I think this will create chaos for them, not to anyone. So I guess they know the reality. They have judged their options, and they are judging their options very carefully. But what I sense is they are open to changes, and it's welcoming.
Well, Sumaira, I'm sure the world doesn't want to disturb the Taliban once again now. Now, Fahim, with the withdrawal of US forces now completed, the Taliban have finally got what they were demanding since the entire negotiations process began. So do the Taliban possess the capacity to run Afghanistan in these testing circumstances amid the looming threats by probable resistance forces?
Well, one thing is clear, that the Taliban group has largely been an insurgency, which means a lot of their ground forces are militant. And the rest, the ones who were in Doha, are more of the political guys. So I wonder if they have enough skilled labor, and as well as other technocrats and technical people who are needed to run a government. At the same time, unfortunately, we saw in hundreds of thousands of brain drain who left Afghanistan. I think that is one of the challenges that the Taliban would face once they form a government and once they start delivering. The best thing would be to ensure these people who had skills and who had higher education and who had already experience of a modern governance system, who have fled the country, to come back and join the Taliban. But that will only happen after they are ensured of their life, and as well as that they face no threat. So the Taliban is right now almost in a drained situation, and would find it very, very difficult to run a country with and also respond to the demands of the people now. Something we will have to see. But right now, I think they are in limited capacity for such a thing.
Right now, James, tell us, if the violence by the extremist groups like ISKP picks up in the near future or the later future, how much of a security challenge will it pose to Afghanistan in itself and the neighboring countries?
I think for Afghanistan itself, well, we've seen what the Islamic State is capable of in terms of the attack on the airport last week, as well as in terms of the rockets that were fired. Now, what we don't know is, but I think one can assume that the Taliban do not have the same detection capabilities that the United States had, which you saw when they were able to pinpoint a car with explosives in it on its way to the airport. So the Islamic State and the Islamic State has proven that they don't only have a presence in various provinces of Afghanistan, they have a presence in Kabul. So in theory, they could prove to be quite a challenge for the Taliban. On top of that, the Islamic State, if it were capable of launching cross-border operations, would have an interest in doing so, because that would disrupt the Taliban's relationships, which are really important for its success. So I think the jury is out on how much of a challenge the Islamic State poses, but the potential is that it could be significant.
Right now, Sumaira, let's talk about peace spoilers now. We know countries in the world want to see peace in Afghanistan, and at the top of the list is Pakistan. And we also know certain countries who do not want to see peace in Afghanistan. And again, topping the list is India. Now, we have seen Indian media playing misinformation campaigns against Afghanistan. They were playing videos of Libya and Syria and other places and showing to the audience, though they have a very large audience around the world, and they are building a narrative which is against the Taliban and obviously against the peace in Afghanistan. Now, how important is this misinformation campaign which is being run and which will be run? And you can say that the Taliban might have just won one war and they are entering into another war, and that is the hybrid war.
Munib, the way we handle misinformation campaigns, and we usually try to overlook it because we want peaceful ties with all our neighbors, and we just want to give peace another chance. So we keep our files maintained, but we do have an eye on misinformation campaigns. But let me tell you, on the other side of the border, it's the Taliban. They are not in a mood to forgive any spoiler who will be living in Afghanistan and will be acting against the people of Afghanistan. And they have made it very clear that be it any country from 6 immediate neighbors or the extended troika, they are not going to tolerate this misinformation campaign against their government, against their people of Afghanistan. And right now there will be another day rising upon the cities of Afghanistan, and it will be handled, and every such element will be dealt with iron fist. And I must quote the statement of Gulbuddin Hikmatyar as well, that as he rendered his unconditional support to the Taliban, and he was speaking to us yesterday, and he made it very clear that we might be fighting with each other, but there is no room for a foreigner element who should be coming to Afghanistan and who should be, and he quoted one of the retired Indian military officer who was offering $100 million and tanks and planes to the Panjsheris. And he said that if 160,000 foreigner troops could not conquer Afghanistan, then what? I think there is no use of $100 million and tanks and planes. So they should be taking lessons from the $3 billion equipment that is being left by US, and they are leaving Afghanistan in the middle of the night with all disappointments and all things like that. So I think Afghanistan is going to be a tough. I think it's going to be a tough cookie for all those who will be playing spoiler, and will be playing proxy on the land, because they have already made it very clear that we are not going to let any element use our soil against anyone.
Well, I guess that gives a message to all the peace spoilers. Now, we are going to continue the special transmission on post-Afghanistan, obviously after the complete US withdrawal, all the allies' withdrawal after a short break. Stay tuned.